this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have I asked my electrician I found on Angie.com to bury my pet hamster Nibbles in our yard for me? Because I was so moved by how carefully he buried my electrical wires, I knew I could trust him to bury my sweet Nibbles after his untimely end. Nibbles, gone too soon. May he scurry in peace.
Hey, sorry about your pet, but I just wire stuff.
Nibbles would have loved you like a brother.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, along with our house DJ, Tolliver. And Tolliver, before we get to talking about protecting ourselves against crime, I have to say my house was struck by lightning last week.
Oh, wow.
After the show. And I realized that a surge protector, which I've always thought of as a thing that you can just use to plug 6 things into one outlet, is actually very useful at protecting against surges, because everything that was plugged into the surge protectors was protected, and the things that weren't, some of them are not working anymore.
Why didn't you tell me this happened, man? Breaking news.
Well, here I am. I like to save things for our little top of show banter. So I want to start by asking you, Tolliver, because I know you take public transit all the time. You walk everywhere. Are you ever afraid of crime?
A little bit, but you know what? I'm 6'5", man. So I think to be honest, like I'm a hipster, but I think people are a little scared of me. Right? Guests
okay, so
chime
you're
in.
Not so worried. Yes, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. You're very tall. So as it turns out, crime consistently ranks as one of the highest priority issues for Americans, with a majority of the country agreeing that is a serious problem. The thing is, though, that crime has actually been coming down since a spike during the pandemic. A new study from the Council on Criminal Justice finds that every kind of violent crime is down compared with pre-pandemic levels. Homicide down 14%, sexual assault down 28%, robbery down 30%. So this hour, we're going to be asking if crime is an issue where you live, and if so, what you want to be done about it. Our number is 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can reach out at listentothemiddle.com. We'll get to your calls in just a moment. But first, last week on the show, we talked about what can be done to address the nation's $36 trillion debt. We heard from a lot of people during the show and afterwards on our voicemail.
This is John calling from South Dakota. Once one understands the nature of money, it's frustrating. So how can you balance in finger quotes, the equation when cash is unlimited and equity is not accounted for? Is this not an accounting problem rather than a deficit problem?
My name is Diana Smith, and I'm in Denver, Colorado. The only way we will really get out of the debt is to grow out of the debt. We need to invest in things that promote growth, like education, research, and infrastructure. All the cuts will slow our growth and not enhance it.
This is Austin Mitchell in Salem, Missouri. One of the things that can be done to help reduce the debt and to secure Social Security is to eliminate the cap on earned income that's subject to Social Security tax. And that would not only help provide for the Social Security, but also help reduce federal debt.
Well, thanks to everyone who called in, and you can hear that entire episode on our podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. So now to our question this hour. Is crime an issue where you live? And if it is, what do you want to be done about it? Tolliver, how can people reach us?
You can call us at 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can write to us at listentothemiddle.com. You can also comment on our live stream on YouTube. I will get your comments on the air, so hit us up on one of those channels.
Joining me this hour, former Baltimore Police Commissioner Michael Harrison. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeremy, for having me.
Ed John Roman is with us, Senior Fellow in the Economics, Justice, and Society Department at the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago. John, welcome to the middle.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, so before we get to the phones, John, if you look at FBI statistics, violent crime fell 49% between 1993 and 2022, and it has fallen since 2022. So how would you say we are doing as a nation right now on crime, John?
I think we're obviously doing far better today than we were doing in the 1970s. As you've noted, crime is down across the board. The challenge here is, of course, that the crime levels in the United States are far above peer nations in Europe and around the world. So while, you look at a city like New York City, which is probably the safest big city in America, and the rate of homicide there is about 5 times what it is in London. So if you're under 55, this is probably the safest America you've ever lived in, but it's still really unsafe compared to lots of the rest of the world.
And why is that? Is there one reason for that, John?
Oh, there's a whole host of reasons for it. Obviously, firearms in civilian hands are legal in the United States. And so things that are fistfights in other countries or gunfights here. The amount of policing in the United States is actually far lower than most of our European peers. And then the way that we try and prevent crime outside of law enforcement, what we do is with social services and human services and health and education lags far behind what's happening in the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. Michael Harrison, you were, as we said, commissioner of the Baltimore Police Department. You were also the head of the New Orleans Police Department before that. What would you say about how we're doing in terms of crime as a nation right now?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and hello to your guests. I think we're doing far better than we were, not just 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but even just the last few years. When I was a young officer in New Orleans, I remember New Orleans being the murder capital of the world, with a city of 600,000 had 460 murders that year. And then when I was a young officer in the 90s, and then when I was the superintendent in my last year in 2018, we had a 50-year low with slightly above 100, and so it has gone back up, and then it has come back down. The same thing in Baltimore. That city was deemed to be the murder capital of the world, and in our highest years, it was 350 plus murders, and now they're slightly breaking 200, and so it has come down in my time there, and then even the year and a half there, but it's coming down everywhere. It has a lot to do with the way police are policing, because police departments are shrinking, getting smaller, having to prioritize when and how and what they do. But it has to do with prosecutions. It has to do with changes of laws, how cities now deal with youth offenders and juveniles, and how we deal with these things. And then you're right, the social service, John said this, and human services, and all the things that we help to prevent crime and help to have people have better lives and better communities. That's not always invested in and prioritized, and it's left to the police to deal with it and collect the blame for it when we see it. And I want to be able to talk about how people really use the word crime. If you ask a person in one part of my city, in both cities, New Orleans and Baltimore, crime means people are being shot and killed in the streets. A couple of miles away, you ask somebody to talk about crime, they say it's out of control. All of our cars are getting broken into. And then if you go to another part of the city and say, talk about crime, they say it's out of control. The kids are walking around with bottles of liquor in their hands in the street. Right. And there's no permit for them to, they're selling liquor on the street. There's no permit, and it's out of control, and they're assembling, and nobody's collecting taxes. And so it means something different to different people. Where you sit, where you live, and how you view it, it will be different. And so if we get a chance, I'd like to be able to break those differences down, because while it is falling in violent crime, it's falling in property crime, but people really care about their quality of life more than anything.
Absolutely. People want to be able to walk around their neighborhoods safely at nighttime and do all the things that they like to do without having to worry about it. I want to focus in just for 1 second, John, on what you talked about with the lack of police officers compared to other countries here. It turns out that around the country, there are reports of shortages of police officers. Is it hard to hire right now, or is it just because of a lack of money in municipalities?
So we've seen a huge decline in the number of people who want to be police officers. And this isn't just a recent phenomenon. It isn't just a reaction to officer-involved shootings like the George Floyd shooting. This is a trend that we've seen for 15 years. Part of that is a pay issue. It's like any other labor market. If you don't pay people what they think they can get somewhere else, they don't want to do it. Part of it is the danger. But part of it is that there are a lot of jobs that people are really interested in doing around law enforcement that are civilian jobs rather than sworn officer jobs. Data science jobs, crime analyst jobs, evidence collection, criminalists. There's a lot of television that makes these jobs seem really interesting. There's a lot of people studying these topics in college and in high school. And these are the jobs that they want to do. And law enforcement has been pretty reluctant about increasing the size of the civilian part of their departments, and has really focused on trying to fill those gaps that they have on the sworn officer side. And the result has been just this general decline in the number of officers. And then COVID, of course, led to a lot of disability. A lot of officers got sick and weren't able to be out on patrol. And so then even with the decline in the number of officers, there's sort of a dark number there, which is how many officers can even go out and patrol. And that number has been down a lot in the early part of this decade. Police are less visible. And this leads to a lot of the things that we're talking about here, where people feel less safe, they see fewer cops around.
Yeah. Does Michael, does it matter in terms of the perception of crime, just if there are more officers out on the street, even if they're not doing anything specifically to stop a crime or to deal with a crime that's happening, just walking down the street? Does that help?
It helps some way and it hurts some way, because if there are more officers who are in the right places doing what they're supposed to be doing, it very well could help with the perception of how people view their police officers. However, if you have more officers and the crime persists, then it begins to be the appearance that they're not effective. Either they don't know how to do what they're supposed to do, or they're choosing not to do what they're supposed to do. Because we have more officers, they're being paid by our tax dollars, and they're not having a positive effect on the complaints of crime that we're giving you. And so it can cut both ways. And so it's chiefs and sheriffs and executives should be very careful about saying, I need more officers. I need more money to have more officers. But those officers have to be where they're supposed to be. They have to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. And they have to be having a positive impact on crime. Because if you have more and you don't get the positive effect of having the more, it will turn on you.
Yeah. A reminder that you can reach us at 844-4MIDDLE. That is 844-464-3353. I see the phone lines lighting up. Tolliver, if you look back in time, as we said, we were at a peak for crime and murders back in the early 1990s, and that was very apparent in the nation's largest city, New York.
Yeah, this is pre-Giuliani New York with David Dinkins. He'd just been elected mayor, and here he was talking about cracking down on crime in his inauguration speech in 1990.
Most of all, we must reaffirm the rule of law and fight back against the pushers and muggers and take back our streets and subways and our parks. and we must do this by night as well as by day. Let me say what I said often during the campaign. I intend to be the toughest mayor on crime this city has ever seen.
And we should say, Tolliver, that in 1993, the Pushers and Muggers of New York rebranded as the criminals formerly known as Pushers and Muggers.
Okay, so you're writing Prince jokes now. That's nice.
That was a Prince joke. Did you like it? I was very proud of it.
I would sing some Prince, but we don't have the rights. So
No, we don't have the rights. Not on the podcast. We'll be right back with more on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have I asked my HVAC guy I found on Angie.com to change my grandpa's trachea tube? Because I was so amazed by how quickly he replaced our air ducts. I knew I could trust him to change Pop-Pop's tube while I was on vacation.
Make it quick, young man.
Aw, see? Pop-Pop trusts you.
I think we should call a doctor.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife.
Boom, boom. This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, and philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. This hour, we're asking if crime is an issue where you live, and if it is, what you want done about it. Tolliver, the number again, please.
Yeah, it's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com and on pretty much all social media.
All right, let's get to the phones. Jack is calling from Salt Lake City, Utah. Jack, welcome to The Middle. What do you think about crime? Is it an issue where you live?
Hi. I
don't necessarily believe that crime for my life in my city necessarily mean a top button issue. In the past couple of months, we have seen the Utah legislator push our city officials into taking a much more aggressive approach on crime, policing, and homelessness. And I've seen my neighborhood park, Liberty Park, it be inundated with more and more police officers who just seem to be sitting about, which is not necessarily, I think, a use of taxpayer dollars that I find to be great. I think that we should definitely see a lot more funding go to police officers who want to solve sexual assaults, murder cases, and actually do, more investigative work than I would like to see police officers, sitting about on our streets.
So, but you feel safe in your area?
Yeah, and I will say that, my area, I live in Central City, which is a neighborhood that is constantly inundated with rumors of horrible crime spikes in the middle of Salt Lake City. And I often tell people where I live, and I am constantly met with the refrain that, I must be so unsafe there. And I'm not. I walk around my neighborhood. I shop in my neighborhood. I spend money locally in my neighborhood all the time. I take public transportation. Again, I want to, highlight I'm a pretty tall guy, so it's a completely totally different story, I would say, than for other people who, from more vulnerable populations.
Yeah.
But for me in my life, I would love to see all this money go toward, clearing sexual assault investigations.
Yeah. Jack, thanks for that call. Michael, what do you think about that as you hear that, as somebody who thinks, not really a problem where I live, and why are they spending all this money on these police in this park?
Well, he touched on two things that I mentioned in the previous segment. One, there may be more officers, but are the officers productive in preventing crime, reducing crime, and apprehending people who commit crime? Then the question, we don't know the answer to the question, what types of crime? And so he lives in Central City, Salt Lake, but is that an area that's prone to violent crime, shootings, robberies, carjackings, murders, or is it larcenies and thefts, car break-ins, shopliftings, other things, quality of life offenses, drug offenses, homelessness issues, which are not crimes? But what exactly are people defining as crime that makes them feel unsafe? And it's different from neighborhood to neighborhood. But I like that he was honest to be able to say he doesn't feel unsafe, although he knows he lives in an area that has rumors of perceptions of crime and crime itself.
Yeah. Let's go to Sean, who's in Dallas, Texas. Sean, what about where you live? It's crime an issue?
Yeah, very much so. But there's two worlds. And when I say that, I used to live in an affluent area, and there was hardly, occasionally burglary or something like that. But I tell you what ended up happening. If there was a homeless person, somebody'd be on the phone, and boy, the police would be all over it. They'd run them out of there. They'd fence off the area they were in, and then they would push them into the area I live now, which is a low-income area, and which is just absolutely completely inundated with homeless people, for all different kinds of reasons. Could be drugs, could be mental, could be whatever. And all the halfway houses are down there, too. You may see 20 different people walk in front of your house. You don't know who they are, and then so, in the complete wisdom of our city, they decided to hire 800 more cops. Well, now all they do is they drive around all over our neighborhoods, and it's fearful for us because a lot of the people around me are brown and black, and they know who ends up in jail, and we just do not have them there. What we need is, I bet you it costs $150,000 to put a police officer out on the streets, every year, salary and all the support. How about spending $150,000 times 800 and put people in some housing? Get them off the streets, And I asked the cop one time, I go...
Yeah, go ahead. Continue.
I asked the cop one time, I said, I know what's happening. You push them out of those affluent neighborhoods, you push them down here, and he goes, well, wouldn't you rather have them in one place than another? And I looked at him, I go, yeah, where do you live? We'll put them in your neighborhood. You know.
Okay,
But that's what I see. Okay.
it's a good point. I want to bring it to our guest, Sean. Thank you so much for that call, John. He brings up the connection between homelessness and crime, and for many people in many cities around this country, as they've seen a rise in unhoused around America, it may have made them fearful in certain parts of the city because, again, there is drug use in many cases, or there's mental illness that's involved, and people don't feel safe. What about the connection between homelessness and crime?
Yeah, so I think this is a really critical point. I'm glad we got to it. So I think people tend to conflate the idea of disorder with crime. So you can see disorderly behavior, people who are unhoused, people who have to live in public in ways that can be messy. That's not criminal by itself, and treating it as a criminal behavior is not the way to solve the problem. This is a problem of social and human services. This is a problem of prevention. This is a problem of bringing the solutions, the evidence-based, data-driven practices to these people rather than just increasing the number of police. We have a tendency here when we see disorder on the rise to get more serious about crime and institute longer penalties, more sanctions. And when crime goes up, we tend to think we need to penalize disorder more. These are two very different phenomena, and they need very different solutions. A lot of places around the country are experimenting with things like co-responder models, where mental health professionals go along with the police to calls where they think that that's the issue, or bringing other social services along to those calls. So I think we're at the cusp of a change in the way we think about these things, and we don't just say, oh, there are a lot of unhoused people, it's dangerous there. Well, it probably isn't dangerous there. Their presence doesn't make it dangerous, but it is a public interest problem. It is a social welfare problem. We do need to address it. Police are part of that solution, but they're only a part.
John, I got a quick question, if I can jump in here, Jeremy. So, know, my Chicago brethren, we're talking about how crime has dropped in Chicago, but everything I hear about Chicago is that, that crime is up, that everybody's getting mugged every single day. What's the difference in that perception? Like, what's causing that cognitive dissonance?
Yeah, so there's a long-term story there that maybe we can get to later. There's a short-term story too, right? So the media does a lot of what we call episodic reporting. So there's an event one day, it's the lead in the news, and then we never hear about it again, and we just go on to the next event, and we act as if each of these events is unusual and therefore newsworthy, but they happen every day. They're probably not. Specifically, though, what has happened in Chicago, it happened in LA, it happened in a number of cities, is where you have these really high profile, like smash and grabs of high-end retail outlets that grab a lot of attention, and they happen along the Magnificent Mile or in the Loop or in some part of Chicago that is considered to be affluent and safe. And it creates this perception that nowhere is safe, even though those are really unusual events, and they're actually not indicated. They turn out not to be indicators of anything. Crime continued to go down, both property and violent crime, but they were in your face in places where people aren't used to it. And that causes people to worry. And I think that's a very reasonable and human reaction to it. Policymakers just need to lean a little harder on the data and the evidence and a little less on the emotion when they think about what the appropriate response is.
Let's go to Tamara, who's in Burlington, Vermont. Tamara, welcome to The Middle. Is crime an issue where you live?
Absolutely. It's become an issue for us definitely in the last few years, so much so that, myself, my friends, my family, we've changed our behaviors. We've really seen the amount of property crime go up, but we've also seen the amount of violent crime, robberies, assaults, shootings, stabbings, even murders. We're really fortunate in Burlington for many, many years. We had a beautiful downtown that was extremely safe. We have a great pedestrian walkway where people of all ages from 3 to 103 would gather, whether it was 8 in the morning or 10 o'clock at night, to kind of people watch and enjoy restaurants and shops and street vendors. And that's changed so much so that our merchants, our restaurateurs are going to the city council on a regular basis saying we need help. And a lot of it's a result of the decriminalization of drug use, a lot of open-air drug use. We have a huge homelessness problem in Vermont. And what we're finding is a lot of crime is coming, from those populations. And, we've tried some of the potential solutions where we're bringing, housing first. And there's a percentage of the population that isn't interested in accepting,
right,
some of those solutions. So it's really impacted the whole sense of community in Burlington has changed, and I'm afraid that it's changed irreparably.
Do you have a solution for it?
I think it's both. You've got to have services, certainly, for those people who are willing to accept it. But I think at the same time, we're struggling with, we've got a county prosecutor who's, who's glommed onto the bail reform. And, we literally have one person who's infamous who has almost 3,000. He's a person who's homeless in Burlington who has almost 3,000 interactions with police. And every time he has an interaction, whether it's violent or nonviolent, he'll often assault people. He's literally back on the street within an hour of being arrested. And obviously that's an example on the other side. But I think what it shows is that, it's kind of, I guess it's the carrot and the stick. You for those folks who are interested and are willing to take advantage of programs, you certainly want to have that. But there are folks who might not be in a position or don't want to take advantage.
Yeah. Tamara, thank you very much for that.
I think you need a little bit of both.
Yeah,
Thank you.
appreciate the call. Michael, this is something you brought up earlier as well, the idea of a prosecutor that will actually prosecute crimes.
Yeah, there's been a number of places where very progressive prosecutors were elected or came into office, and there was a fundamental change in what charges they would accept and charges that they would actually prosecute. Then there's the whole criminal justice reform, bail reform, jail depopulation, juvenile justice reform, all of those things taking place because of high-profile incidents that have occurred in different cities across the country over years. And so you have all these things going on. You have the shrinkage of police and sheriff departments where they have to then prioritize what they're going to enforce and how they're going to spend their time because they're working with less but asked to do more. Progressive prosecutors choosing what they will prosecute very differently than what would have been done maybe by their predecessors. And when you put all that together with the lack of services, and then you have cities that are not making the investment in the preventive issues, dealing with the environmental designs of neighborhoods, and having programmatic solutions to help people not commit crime in the very first place. When you put that together, you've seen a surge in both violent and property crime and quality of life offenses. But I think the pendulum is swinging back, and you're starting to see electorates and delegates at the state and local level create new laws. You're seeing prosecutors now prosecuting more crimes, and you're seeing people being tougher on crime than maybe the past 5 or 10 years. So it's coming back.
Well, and I'm glad that you brought up that issue and the politics of it, because we've thankfully, I think, been able to have a very good, reasonable discussion this hour without really getting too political. But it is an important piece of this. And John, I read a Fox News opinion piece that gives credit to the ICE immigration enforcement that's been going on for the decrease in crime this year. There are many who believe that is making a difference. What do you say to that? Is that just political, or is that really making a difference?
It really doesn't make much of a difference. So, but let me qualify that, right? So if the policy is that we want to deport people who've been convicted of criminal acts, then that, of course, is going to make a difference. The best predictor if somebody will commit a crime in the future is have they committed one in the past, right? But that's not the immigration story writ large. The immigration story writ large is the evidence is overwhelming that immigrants, that places where there are concentrations of recent immigrants, whether it's in the cities or in the suburbs, have much lower crime than you would predict based on the socioeconomic characteristics of that place. So you have a very poor place that has a lot of crime. If a lot of recent immigrants move into one of those neighborhoods, crime will go down, and it makes a lot of sense. People who make that sort of Herculean effort to come here have very productive qualities to them, and they bring those with them. They also don't want to come to the attention of law enforcement and have to leave. So maybe a little bit, but the story of this crime decline that we're in the middle of really doesn't have anything to do with immigration.
Tolliver, what is coming in online?
Yeah, Marius in Live Oak, Florida says, I'm in a small town. Crime is picking up as more people move in, escaping expensive cities. So prices go up, worsening existing poverty, homelessness, and drug abuse. The city focuses on law enforcement to protect property and economic growth, of course. And then Karen in Chicago, Risky, says, white-collar crime, particularly tax evasion and healthcare fraud, is an issue that affects me or immediate family members. Is white-collar crime part of this conversation, John? Like, is that something that you're hearing on the streets?
No, it's not. I don't think we're focusing so much in this hour on white-collar crime. We could do an entire hour about that, Tolliver. But let me go to Aiden quickly in Kansas City. Aiden, welcome to the middle. Is crime an issue there where you live in Kansas City?
Yeah, crime is definitely an issue in Kansas City. We've seen a lot of property crime, seen even homicides go up. And I think the biggest thing is that we've had our police budget go up each year, and Kansas City is actually unique in that we are required by state law to give I think it's around 25% of our city budget, which no other city in Missouri has to do besides St. Louis. We are required to do that. Yet each year it goes up and up and up, but our crime also keeps going up and up. And while people are getting robbed, losing their cars, actually being impacted by crime, the solutions aren't there. And I think it's extremely frustrating. And especially when, there's no good jobs in Kansas City right now. There's not, our rent continues to go up. And, yeah, people are struggling all over, both people who are not doing crime and who aren't doing crime, and who are doing crime.
Yeah.
So it's everybody's suffering all over, yet there's no real solution.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for that call, Aiden. Tolliver, we've talked about Chicago. No city probably has been singled out for crime by President Trump more than the city of Chicago.
Yeah, but like other cities, Chicago's crime, as we talked about, has been dropping. Mayor Brandon Johnson says it's happening faster than it is in Chicago's peer cities.
Our core work that I've been zeroed in on over the course of my first 2 years in office is to drive down violence in this city. When we look at the numbers from July thus far, you can see month to month, the data points are still trending in the right direction. Our year-to-date numbers continue to show a stable decline, with violent crime down 20% as a whole. But homicides are down, shootings are down, as well as shooting victims and robberies.
And by the way, Chicago had the most overall murders of any U.S. city in 2023. But when you look at the murder rate, where you compare it to the actual population, it's actually not even in the top 10 U.S. cities for that.
So, and then makes you wonder who's the top, That's next time.
Well, St. Louis is up there at the top, and I think Memphis is also right up near the top as well. Yeah. We will be back with more of your calls on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have I asked my electrician I found on Angie.com to bury my pet hamster Nibbles in our yard for me? Because I was so moved by how carefully he buried my electrical wires, I knew I could trust him to bury my sweet Nibbles after his untimely end. Nibbles, gone too soon. May he scurry in peace.
Hey, sorry about your pet, but I just wire stuff.
Nibbles would have loved you like a brother.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife.
Boom, boom. This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. In this hour, we're asking if crime is an issue where you live, and if it is, what do you want done about it? You can call us at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also reach out at listentothemiddle.com. I'm joined by John Roman, Senior Fellow in the Economics, Justice, and Society Department at the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago, and former Baltimore Police Commissioner Michael Harrison. Let's go right back to the phones. Diamond is calling from Philadelphia. Diamond, go ahead.
Hey, hi, this is Diamond. I'm calling from Philadelphia, as you just said. I did want to speak to crime being just rampant. Here in Philadelphia, specifically where I live, there was just recently a mass shooting, actually a couple within the city within the past couple of weeks. Maybe about 3 weeks ago, my dog woke up and, I just thought my dog was shaking her tail. My fiance woke me up and was like, "Is everything okay?" And I was like, "I guess, the noise was the dog." Woke up the next morning, there was a mass shooting 2 blocks away from my house. I mean, over 40 gunshots went off. And I work with plenty of families and parents and things like that. And I think that what I'm seeing, and this is very anecdotal, excuse me, is that a big thing that a lot of the cities don't touch on is parenting. In a sense, how can we come together as a community to ensure that parents are present in their child's life from a young age into young adulthood, and raising them well. And that also translates to how is that parent also parented, right? So it could. I haven't seen the numbers, right? It might reflect back to home ec, right? Like when there might have been a time where home ec was removed out of public schooling and things like that. But I feel like a large issue is a lot of these kids, like a lot of gun violence in the city is from kids 14 and under.
Yeah.
Right? Like guns with auto players and things like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Diamond. Thank you very much. Michael Harrison, what about that? The responsibility that I guess we all have in helping to reduce crime.
Well, look, we all have a responsibility. It should not lie squarely on the shoulders of police officers. And when you find communities that have a total reliance on police to prevent crime and to prevent it, to solve it, to reduce it, when that doesn't happen, law enforcement get the blame. And you heard in the earlier segment, the police budgets are getting larger, police departments are hiring more cops, but more crime is happening and it's getting worse. And so people challenge that. Here's the point I wanted to make about that. everybody has a responsibility. The cities have the responsibility to improve the design, the things that drive people toward crime, that push people toward crime, all of the preventive things that could be done in prevention. There has to be investments in that. It is very misleading sometimes, and I've had the pleasure of working for 5 mayors across my 2 cities in a 10-year period. When leaders talk about reducing crime, reducing murder, reducing all types of crime, that can be very misleading because it doesn't account for the 1 or 2 or 3 neighborhoods where it's actually going up. While it's a true statement that it's reduced across a city over a period of a time, like a year-to-date number, it may not be true for 1 or 2 neighborhoods where the people are vocal about it's going up, which is also true. And so it's almost a catch-22, and we have to be very, very careful because statements like that don't land very well on the ears of the person who just got robbed or the person who had a shooting or murder on their block. When you hear the leaders say, well, crime is down 20%, well, it might be across the city, but there's a lot of context about what's causing that or what's driving that and why it's not true for some parts of a city.
Right, and when you're the victim of a crime, you're going to remember that forever, and that will change your perceptions. Let's go to Doug, who is in Carrollton, Texas. Doug, go ahead with your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. Just to start off, I kind of agree with Sean. I'd rather see the money spent on helping homeless people find housing rather than, hiring more cops. But that's kind of beside the point. I'm also glad that you're differentiating between property crimes and violent crimes. My understanding is the most violent crime victims are actually acquainted with their attackers in some way, which doesn't lessen the severity of the crime or their victimness or whatever, but it's kind of a different problem. It's more of a social problem than a law enforcement problem, the way I see it. But I live in the Dallas area most of my life, and I lived in Austin for a while, but I really have not had that much problem with crime. I've lived in middle-class neighborhoods, not so great neighborhoods before, but, for example, I've never felt the need to have a firearm to protect myself or whatever, but, I apologize for getting political, but I really think that politicians try to gin up this issue to fire up their base and demonize people, certain groups of people. A good example is Trump with the whole immigration thing, trying to make it act like there's this invasion of MS-13 gangs, coming in to, ruin our way of life or whatever, just to get votes. And, I don't see it that way.
All right. Well, that's an interesting point, Doug. John, what do you think about that? The idea that politicians just use this as an issue. And by the way, local news also. There's the old phrase in journalism: if it bleeds, it leads on local news. A lot of people see the crime that's happening, even if it maybe shouldn't be the top story every day in their neighborhood.
Yeah, we're really stuck in this 1980s and 1990s bifurcation where you're either tough on crime or you're trying to solve the underlying problem and you have to somehow choose. The reality is that sitting here in 2025, we know so much more about how to solve all of these problems. We know more about how to investigate crimes effectively. We have all these technologies at our beck and call. Our police officers are more professional and better trained. Our social services are better. We have a whole class of medications that we all take for granted now that didn't exist until the 1990s, and on and on and on. And so all of the solutions are to think about how do we do as much of the best things on both sides. When you have somebody who is a serial offender, the person who's been arrested, who's 1,000 times, is the example. I've seen rap sheets of people who are arrested 100 times. So this is somebody law enforcement needs to take more seriously. There's just no question about that. But those are a small number of people. We have a whole set of evidence that we can use for people who are just engaging in crime because they have some other underlying problem that is solvable. And so when you hear a politician tell you it's one thing or the other, you don't know what the right answer is, but you know they're wrong, because the real answer is that it's some combination of both.
It's not as simple as that. Nothing is really black or white. So let's go to Gregory, who's in Charlotte, North Carolina. Gregory, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hey there, Jeremy. Thank you so much for your show. I appreciate it very much. You are a very astute interviewer, if you will.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I have, as I told the caller ID screener, just recently out of jail, and I have a different perspective of crime out of necessity. And what I was around for 58 days was people that committed crimes, basically, to get themselves into jail because that's the only option they had.
They committed crimes just
And
so
I'm
that
an
they could
introvert.
be in jail. Because why? Then they get a place to sleep. They get a meal. Is that what you're saying?
They get free hots in the cot, yes, sir.
Mm.
And it's unfortunate, but it's reality. And I can only
So what does
speak
that
for
tell
my
you?
state. That's what that told me. That I'm a college graduate, and interpersonal communications is my degree. So I just sat and I listened, and I talked to older, I talked to younger, and I don't know what the solution is by any means, but it was intriguing to see and listen to, never mind the braggadocious things that happen between criminals. But when I was able to break them off as a 52-year-old man one-on-one and actually hear their story, it was intriguing because they committed a crime so they could go to jail because that's the only security they had in their life.
Well, I appreciate you calling in, Gregory. Yeah, go ahead, Michael. Did you want to ask him a question?
Institutionalization. They have been institutionalized, and they have a comfort level with the institution more than they do out on their own.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I lost Gregory.
It's not very common, but it does happen to some people. And look, I explained when I used to talk to my officers about thinking about crime and how we think about the crime and the behavior, not the person. And so we want to be tough on the bad behavior, the unwanted behavior, not hard on the person. And that's where some cops and some departments have lost their way. And I would say, think about the person who says, I steal because I feed my starving addiction. I steal because I feed my starving family. Like, both of those are wrong. Both of those are bad. But, people are sometimes reduced to two bad choices. But that's an issue that is beyond them, that we as people, we as governments and society have to do a better job to not let people get in those predicaments.
Commissioner Harrison, I actually have a follow-up on that one. So a lot of our writers are asking about the connection between crime and the economy, which you just kind of touched on. Does that connection exist for you, or are there sort of circumstances where you can anticipate spikes in crime in your cities?
Well, as both a practitioner and an academic, having learned it and taught it, I think there is a correlation between crime and the economy. For example, things like robbery. Carjackings are more violent robberies, but robbery is a byproduct of poverty. And like carjackings and auto thefts, that's a byproduct of poverty. I was fortunate, some of us are fortunate, I was able to allow my son to drive my car, later bought him a car. But he had friends, and we knew other people who didn't have a car. Their parents were never going to be able to get them one. They stole a car so that they could have the same opportunity to drive and go places and do things. So there are people who choose illegitimate means to accomplish a goal, just like some of us choose a legitimate means to accomplish a goal, even though that illegitimate means is a crime. Mm-hmm. And so there are correlations between crime and poverty, which means there's a correlation between crime and economics.
Yeah. Marie is calling from Hartford, Connecticut. Hi, Marie. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Hello. What I wanted to say is that I'm truly in the middle, meaning I was brought up in blue-collar and affluent suburbs, and I've lived in the city for a long time. I have an extensive history working with people involved in homelessness, incarceration, addiction, things like that, and related to health. So my major pet peeve is that many, many people who never step themselves inside the city, they like they get excited by talking about how dangerous places are. They couldn't tell you one street from another. You know, they don't realize that sometimes a street is really congested because that's the commercial center of that neighborhood. And I just really get annoyed by that, because is there crime in our city? Yes. Is it better than the 80s and 90s? I would say yes. But I just don't like people passing ignorance when they have not experienced it. They think there's no culture in the city. They think that, you know, they have no idea about what people are doing in their churches and in their schools and the talents the children have. So my solution is it's very easy. If we say in America that children are our most precious thing, children, if they were our most precious asset, we would make sure that every one of them got an excellent education and that families had stable housing. We don't really want that. We're not really, and in the state, we just saw that, trying to push for more help in housing for people, because Connecticut has the highest amount of wealth and gap between that and poverty. So a lot of times these, am I making it long?
No. I think we've got it. And you made some really good points, and you gave us a solution too, which is nice. You answered all the parts of the question.
Okay.
Yeah, Michael Harrison, go ahead.
Jeremy, I want to just say this to go back to Tolliver's point really quickly. Just because I said there's a correlation between crime and economics, crime and poverty, that is not saying that poor people are prone to commit crime or will commit crime. That is not the same thing, and I just wanted to be very clear about that, because while there's a correlation, it doesn't mean that all people who are poor will be prone to commit crime, because that's not true.
Yeah, I'm going to sneak in one more call, and it's Tanya in St. Louis. Tanya, go ahead quickly with your thoughts.
Absolutely. Hey, I think great conversation, but I think we really need to focus more on the statistics that are actually showing that crime stats are decreasing after a spike during COVID. St. Louis is often at the top list of cities across the country for crime, property, and violent, but statistics actually show that our crime has been on the decrease. And focusing on crime without talking about statistics, I fear keeps the populace worried, nervous, instead of actually recognizing that a lot of good things are happening and that we're actually improving in this realm.
Yeah, thank you very much for that call, Tanya. And, you know, because she's calling it from St. Louis, I want to just ask each of you one last thing, which is St. Louis is where Michael Brown was killed. Michael Harrison, before you got to the Baltimore Police Department, Freddie Garrett Gray was killed. We had the George Floyd killing. Has the idea of trust in law enforcement, has that been built up, do you think, back up since those very high-profile police-involved killings of people? Michael, I'll start with you briefly.
In some places, yes. In some places, no. You know, I am the consent decree monitor in Minneapolis, and the answer there is no from community. In other places, no. But in many places, yes.
John, what about you? How important is that trust, and do you think it's been built back up?
Oh, I think it's very important. We talk a lot about police legitimacy and legal cynicism and the effects that has on people's willingness to commit a crime. I don't think it's changed at all, and I think it's important to understand that it's not people's trust in law enforcement is not uniformly distributed. If you look at people who live in places where there is a long history of violence and there's a lot of accumulated trauma there, trust in police is very low, and it's very stable at very low levels. And these police-involved shootings don't make it worse, and then it doesn't get better. Where it goes up and down a lot is really in the middle, right? Where we're reacting to these stories, and that's that's important, that people are engaged and they respond to these incidents, and we try to affect policy. But the people who we really should care about are the people who live in poverty, who are experiencing this every day, have low trust in police, and making investments there where we're really treating them in a human way and trying to solve their problems and taking the violence seriously. That's the only way to restore that trust. And that's because that's where the crime is. That's really the most important part of that indicator.
A great note to end on. I want to thank my guests, John Roman, Senior Fellow in the Economics, Justice, and Society Department at the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago, and former Baltimore and New Orleans Police Chief Michael Harrison. Thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very
And
much.
thanks to our amazing callers as well. Don't forget, The Middle is available as a podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. Our next episode drops in a few days. It's an episode of our weekly podcast extra, One Thing Trump Did, about the cancellation of temporary protective status for migrants from certain countries. And next week on The Middle, we're going to be back here asking you whether the reindustrialized America that President Trump seems to want is possible anymore.
As always, you can call in at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also reach out at listentothemiddle.com, where you can also sign up for our free weekly newsletter and support us with a tax-deductible contribution.
The Middle is brought to you by Long Nook Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, Sam Burmistaz, John Barth, Annika Deschler, and Brandon Kondritz. Our technical director is Steve Mork. I'm Jeremy Hobson. I'll talk to you next week.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather. In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to everybody.
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'm going back to my hometown to uncover the truth. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
14 years in prison for killing a young woman. A 15-year sentence for a crash that caused 3 deaths. 12 and a half years for killing a child and critically injuring her mother. All true stories, all caused by marijuana-impaired drivers. No matter what you tell yourself, if you feel different, you drive different. So, if you're high, just don't drive. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.